What's up, guys? Welcome back to Deck Tech for Decks. I'm your host Caleb. If you guys want to support the channel, you can click on that whatnot link in the description down below. You'll get a free $15 whenever you sign up, and you'll be supporting the channel whenever you do that. Additionally, you can become a patron. Not only is that the best way to support the channel, but additionally you'll get to vote weekly on a deck tech for me to cover. Now let's get into today's deck tech with Eris. And you guys liked the crap out of my last Eris video. You got to 500 likes, which was the threshold we had to get for a budget build. So without further ado, here's the budget build. And exactly what normally happened whenever you build a budget deck. You dug deeper and you found more tech. So there's some really cool cards to check out, even if you saw the non-budget version, and I will leave the link to the non-budget version in the description down below if you want a way to upgrade this deck in the future. But without further ado, let's get into some of this tech I found. The first thing I found were cards that said draw cards equal to the biggest CMC among permanents you control. That's 10 cards because our commander costs 10 mana without its reduction. That's going to be extremely broken in this deck, especially when we're running cards like Pyretic Charge. Now we can draw 10 cards, discard 10 cards, give our whole board +10/+10. I did take more of a go wide strategy with this deck since it's a little more budget. We're going to lean away from the combo and we're going to lean into going super wide and smashing our opponents. So we're also going to be running Surge to Victory in this deck. It's just a card I keep forgetting exists, and it can do some amazing work in decks that have a lot of very powerful instant and sorcery cards like this deck. So if that sounds like a deck tech you want to get into, let's get into it. Let's go over some cool, unique tech we get to run before we get into the core of the deck. Traverse Eternity and Rush of Knowledge. Drawing 10 cards in a Storm list is just going to get you there sometimes, especially if you have a Stormkiln artist on the battlefield. Those prowess dragons are going to get massive. Boon of the Wishgiver, Frostveil Ambush, Step Through, and Creative Outburst are literally just in the deck so we can throw them in our graveyard. Step Through is going to be really useful here. There's a ton of very impactful wizards in this deck, so the fact that it's a tutor and reduces the cost of our commander is going to be amazing. Quiet Speculation is a card that got recommended to me in the comments of my last video on this commander, and I couldn't agree more, especially if we grab a 1 CMC, a 3 CMC, and a 4 CMC flashback spell. Quiet Speculation is 2 CMC, so that's going to put 4 different CMCs of instant and sorcery cards in our graveyard, reducing our commander's casting cost by 8, making it only cost Izzet to cast. We also have a way to generate infinite combat steps in this budget brew. We're playing Surge to Victory and Savage Beating. Now, by themselves, these cards can end the game alone, but when you combine them, they will net you infinite combat steps. We just have to make sure we discard Savage Beating or cast it the previous turn, and then we exile it with Surge to Victory. Now, as long as we can connect with our creatures that already have evasion, we're going to get infinite combat steps and kill the entire table. I really want to hammer home the amount of synergy Surge to Victory has here, because remember, in the early game, we're discarding stuff like Creative Outburst, Boon of the Wishgiver. All of these high CMC cards we're never going to cast. Now, all of our creatures are going to get buffed to the moon, and we're going to get copies of these kind of broken spells. So, like, again, this is going to be an amazing card in the deck. Now let's get into the core of the deck. We have Rain and Riches. This is going to be amazing in this deck because as long as we have a treasure token and a 2 CMC spell, it's going to ensure that we can cast a spell and then cast another spell due to the cascade trigger, ensuring that we're getting those prowess dragons every single turn. Archmage Emeritus, Jorian, Wavebreak Hippocamp, Stella Lee are a solid way to make sure we're turning those cantrips into card advantage. Case of the Ransacked Lab is also super solid here. Not only is it a cost reducer, but it is additionally card advantage. Magnus the Red is going to be incredibly useful here. Now all of those drakes and dragons we're creating are going to reduce the cost of our instant and sorcery spells. He can flat win us the game if we have the right cards in hand. We're also playing Thunderclap Drake, Haughty Djinn, Goblin Electromancer just to reduce the cost of our instant and sorcery spells even further. Stormkiln Artist is amazing, especially with all of these cantrips we have. Now we cast a spell and we can instantly get mana to cast another spell. That's exactly what our commander wants to do every single turn. Talrand, just for another source of creature tokens. This deck goes wide and ends the game by pumping our entire board state up, so Talrand's going to be amazing in this strategy. Rihanna, again, just making more tokens of our most broken creature we have on the battlefield. then we buff them up and win the game. Mizzix's Mastery is essentially a Crater Hoof in this deck, along with Rod of Absorptions. Since you actually cast the spells that are exiled with it, we're going to get a prowess trigger for each spell we cast, right? There were some people calling out Rod of Absorption as anti-synergy because you actually exile the card whenever you cast it, so it doesn't end up in your graveyard to reduce your commander. But I think they're missing how this deck is actually reducing the cost of our commander, because 9 times out of 10, we're casting a 1 CMC spell turn 1, a 2 CMC spell turn 2, and then anything else we can either discard with our mini discard effects or cycle them into our graveyard to further reduce our commander. So Rod of Absorption is just going to be a crazy upside I don't think we can exclude from the deck, because it also is going to exile all of our opponent's instant sorceries. So they could feed the crap out of this, and then we could end up with some massive prowess dragons that are just going to end the game. Pyretic Charge is going to be amazing here, especially with those cards that have us draw cards equal to the CMC of our commander, so we can draw 10 cards, cast the useful cards, and then discard all of the useless cards into the graveyard and buff our entire board while we're doing that. This can really end the game in a lot of scenarios, especially because of that plot ability. Being able to cast this for free on the turn where we're going off is insane. Irenicus's Vial Duplication, having 2 of our commanders, just going to make double the Drakes. Dragon Rage Channeler is going to be amazing early game, just surveilling those instant and sorcery cards into our graveyard to reduce the cost of our commander. Again, more ways to put instant and sorcery cards in our graveyard that doesn't include casting them. Ashmouth Dragon, I love this card. Now we are on a lot of cantrips, but the fact that this deals 2 damage to anything means that I do think it's worth it in this deck. Elemental Eruption is another solid game ender in this deck. Can you imagine this exiled under Surge to Victory? You're just going to get a massive amount of dragons. Now we do have to pass the turn, but as long as we make it back to our turn, we are going to win the game. Mana Geyser is an amazing spell to cast the turn you're trying to go off. I've had this net up to 25 mana before, and 9 times out of 10 you can probably guarantee this being 15. It's a very useful card that just generates a massive amount of mana for you. Another really good synergy I want to cover real quick is Baral's Expertise. You cast Baral's Expertise, bounce your opponent's most threatening things, and then you cast another spell for free, and that will trigger your commander, netting you that dragon. Let's get into those cantrips we're going to be utilizing. We have Brainstorm, Opt, Impulse, Consider, Thought Scour. I like Thought Scour here because there's a lot of cards that have Scry on them, or we set up the top of our library with a Brain Freeze, then we can Thought Scour and mill some instant and sorcery cards into our graveyard, further reducing the casting cost of our commander. Quicken and Born Upon the Wind are going to allow us to cast our sorcery spells, or at least one of our sorcery spells, at instant speed, so that can be very flexible as well. Expedite, Needle Drop, and Anticipate, some more cantrippy stuff going on here. Demand Answers and Izzet Charm. Now we're getting into the effects that have us draw cards and discarding cards. This is going to make us reduce the casting cost of our commander extremely quickly. Unexpected Windfall, Big Scorer. I love these effects because they not only discard cards, but additionally they give us mana, right? So now we can cast a Big Score or Unexpected Windfall and then use one of the treasure tokens to cast another cantrip, ensuring that we can trigger our commander. Frantic Search is going to be very good here as well, since it untaps 3 lands, it costs 3 mana, and it discards cards. It kind of does everything this deck wants to do. Factor Fiction, another very flexible card here. You're at least going to dig 5 cards deep, and you'll get to choose what cards you want to keep, what cards you want to go into your graveyard, and again, that's going to reduce the cost of your commander very significantly. Prismari Command is just a solid card. Visions of Ruin can be a net even the first time you cast it, and you can cast it from your graveyard for only 2 red since our commander costs so much, and it can be net positive the second time around. Additionally, it's one of those flashback spells we can use to reduce the cost of our commander. Bottle Cap Blast, again, another way to almost net even, but you're going to get rid of something and then get a little bit of treasure tokens back. That's going to do it for this deck tech, guys. Don't forget to like this video if you are enjoying these budget builds. Special shout out to my patrons, Praetor, Excessum, Chicken Salad, and Newsome. You guys really keep the channel going, and I appreciate it a ton. With that being said, I hope this helped you in your deck building endeavors, and I will see you in the next one.